Hello, and welcome to Virtual Abilities 2026 Mental Health Symposium. My name is Andy Cooper. I have been in SL for 22 years, and I enjoy a variety of activities such as photography, performing at a theater, and exploring. In real life, I am from the USA and a retired teacher of 30 years who likes to travel and explore as well. Today, I would like to introduce Dr. Natalie Hellman and Dr. Andrew Sherrill. Both are clinical psychologists who focus on pain and traumatic stress. Dr. Hellman is the Director of Behavioral Health Science in the Center for Family Medicine and Prisma Health. She is also a clinical assistant professor at the University of South Carolina School of Medicine at Greenville. Dr. Sherrill is a clinical psychologist and assistant professor at the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Emory University School of Medicine. The title of the presentation is Approaching Emotion and Chronic Pain: What Happens When We Stop Avoiding? Audience, please hold your questions and comments to the end so as not to interrupt our presenters. Welcome, Dr. Hellman and Dr. Sherrill. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Andrew and I are both new to Second Life, so I appreciate all of the grace you're giving us as we figure this out. So like she said, Andrew and I are both licensed clinical psychologists, and we both work on the East Coast of the USA, so I appreciate that this is an international audience coming from all over the world. Hopefully, we're not going to put you to sleep with our talk. Okay. So during this, we're going to briefly cover how we think about pain and how pain and emotions, and especially in conditions like PTSD, interact with each other. Andrew and I will talk about where we get stuck and then what we can do to take our lives back. There are going to be a few moments where we would like some audience participation, so we'll announce that very clearly, and you're always welcome to put it in the chat. But my first question, and I'd like to hear a couple of answers from the audience, is from people about why they think we have pain. What is the purpose of pain? Or why is it helpful to experience pain? Any ideas? Keeps us alive, yeah. To protect ourselves. It's a warning that something is wrong or unsafe. Nerve damage, yep, that can definitely happen. And there's a way to think about that where we have both of these things together. It tells me to sit down. That's true. If I've been standing too long or sitting in a weird way, it definitely tells me to move. We think about pain as in its original form, in its acute form, pain that lasts less than 3 months, as something that is very helpful to us, just like some of the comments have been made. It is unpleasant, and it's kind of supposed to be that way because that's what tells us that something is wrong or something could be injured and that we need to take care of ourselves or make a change. If I get a cut on my toe and I feel pain, then that pain tells me maybe I need to disinfect it, clean it, put a Band-Aid on it, or maybe even change how I walk until my foot heals. I think about pain kind of like a smoke alarm in our body, and I want my smoke alarm to go off if there's a fire, right? That's going to keep me safe. So in this way, everyone needs pain. It really helps us stay safe and unharmed, but sometimes our smoke alarms can get a little stuck. It might go off when there's no fire. I think many of us have had our smoke alarms go off while we're cooking or when we light a candle. And over time, our smoke alarms can become hyper responsive. So it can turn on at any moment for the slightest thing. And when that happens over a period of time, that's when our pain can become chronic. It's lasted longer than 3 months, and it's when our smoke alarms are constantly going off when there is a fire and when there's not one present. And as we've been talking about throughout this symposium, pain is very commonly found with psychiatric conditions as well. Pain is an unpleasant experience after all. And one of the conditions that is a particular research interest is with PTSD. Very briefly, this is a psychiatric condition where someone experiences a traumatic event, which is an event of actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence. And when we're having PTSD, it's almost like we get stuck in this response pattern of seeing threats everywhere. We're constantly haunted by the memory of this trauma, and our body is stuck in this fight or flight mode that was present and kept us safe during the trauma. But now, when we're no longer in danger, it isn't as helpful as we hope it is. And if you think about it, pain's purpose is to keep us safe, and PTSD's purpose at its core is to keep us safe. It kind of makes sense that these two go together, right? When we look at brain areas and brain activations, we find that many of the same brain regions are overlapping across pain and PTSD in people who only have one of the conditions and people who have both. In fact, sometimes the network of these regions together, we will call them the threat detection system or the salience detection system. So, for example, in this picture, the green areas are areas that are only activated by pain. And it's unsurprising, these are a lot of the somatosensory areas, the parts that tell us where touch or sensation is in our body. The red ones are activated during PTSD, and the purple ones are activated by both. So, quite a lot of overlap. But that tells us that if we think about it from this perspective, there's things we can do that can help us retrain our smoke alarm to be more accurate. Because what happens is that when our smoke alarms are going off, oftentimes we withdraw, right? When I'm in pain, I don't want to get out of bed. I just want to rest. And my body wants to conserve my energy. And oftentimes people are scared that if they move again, pain is going to come back or the pain is going to get worse. And there's a term for this called kinesiophobia, which is the fear of movement, because anything might bring the pain back. In PTSD, we see a different kind of withdrawal. People will do things to avoid particular emotions like sadness, anger, fear, or shame. They might not leave their home. They might try to rest because they don't want to feel these particular emotions or have these memories and reminders coming back up. And in a way, in the short term, this can work really well. When we are avoiding something, it gives us a lot of relief because we no longer have to experience that thing that was so unpleasant. If I'm at a party where I don't know anybody and it's really crowded and I'm uncomfortable and I leave, I get a sense of relief from that. If I feel sad when I get a bad grade or a job performance review, instead of feeling that emotion, maybe I distract myself and I go play a video game or I do something else. In the moment, that might be really helpful. But what happens is when we start to do this as a response too often, if we start to get in this pattern where all we're doing is avoiding, anytime we're uncomfortable, we avoid, our lives start to really suffer. And we find that our worlds just become smaller and smaller, and people talk about feeling trapped or like they don't have a choice anymore. It's almost like their emotions or their pain is what runs their lives, not us. So Andrew is going to lead us through some examples of how this can look and what we can do to take back our lives when emotion and pain are in the driver's seat and we want to go somewhere else. So Andrew, I'll turn it over to you. Ooh, I'm not sure if you're speaking, but your microphone might not be on. Andrew, I'm not able to hear. Something might have gone awry.
I'm going to tell Andrew how to fix his microphone. Hang on a second, please.
Thank you.
Can people hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Aaron. I had to unclick it and click something. Okay, great. All right. So let me look at the slides again here. Um, all right. So, looking up at the slides here, I'm going to tell kind of a story. We're going to kind of repeat the same kind of message several times, for that really kind of help it stick. And we want to hear lots of, feedback from everybody and questions as we wrap it up. So here's a narrative of a pretty prototypical a pain and PTSD case. So imagine, let's call this guy Steve. He's driving around. It's a nice sunny day, no pain in his body, like life's good. And then he gets into his car accident. Looking at panel number 2, he has his neck and back injury immediately, and he's in this really sharp acute pain. And also, he can see the cars around him too also got into the accident, and he can see some pretty horrific images, right? He can see blood and injuries in other drivers. He's immediately taken to the hospital, and at the hospital, he's just miserable. So it's even hard to describe what he's feeling. It's been that trauma was a shock to his system, right? So his uh, extreme pain and discomfort throughout his body, his neck, his back, but also he's just frustrated that this all happened. Um, he feels still kind of confused about what happened, and he's really also scared. Eventually, he has to leave the hospital. He's got his partner there with him, who wants to help. She's concerned, and of course, she's going to be the one driving because he's still in pain, and he's still trying to and how do I move on from here? When they're back at home, let's move forward a couple of weeks. His partner might say, "Hey, let's go to the market. Let's go shopping," and as he his neck might be feeling better. I think it's ready to go out, but then he thinks about it a little more and thinks, well, you know what? The last time I was in the car, I got into an accident, and I just don't want to get re-injured. Um, Also, I think driving is actually more dangerous than I thought. So you know what? No, I'm just going to stay at home. You can go to the market. I'm going to put back on my neck brace and just really make sure I don't get hurt again. You can go out shopping. I'll just stay at home and watch TV. So he's at home a lot now, and he's watching TV, and the movie Fast and Furious shows up. Now he's not in a car. He's actually in a comfortable lazy boy. Um, his neck has made significant progress uh, in a natural recovery from the strain, and yet he still has a strong emotional response to seeing the Fast and Furious come up on his TV. Um, he immediately turns it off. Now, he doesn't know if he's turning it off because of an increase of pain or if it's panic or there's a sense of danger. It's just a sense there's some kind of threat. And it'd be a lot easier just to turn it off and not be faced with this threat. He keeps the TV off and thinks, well, I am hungry. I don't want to go out shopping. My partner's not around. I'm just going to use Uber Eats. And then there starts a pattern of him not leaving. He's kind of having life accommodated for him for a bit. He gets a lot of Uber Eats. He puts on some weight. He's not taking care of his body. He's not shaving. Life becomes less and less fulfilling. He might decide eventually to just start watching TV again, and he notices it just seems to be getting worse, his responses to things he sees on the TV. So it could be a police chase he sees on the news. Again, he gets really angry now. It's not necessarily just pain or fear. He's just angry that the news would even show car accidents. At this point, his life is really constrained. He's not leaving the couch much, and he's, again, really frustrated, really externalizing like his frustrations, like the world is completely unsafe, the world is against him. And meanwhile, he's not with his partner, not doing the things he typically enjoys. Now, in this case, people often ask, okay, is this a PTSD thing? Is this a pain thing? Often it's both. Sometimes it's a little PTSD forward, sometimes a little bit pain forward. And as Dr. Hellman mentioned, there's good neurobiological reasons to explain that, but I want to try to use as much basic language as possible to understand this cycle. And we can call this cycle the avoidance trap. So I'm going to go to the left side of the screen and talk about the PTSD cycle first, and then the pain cycle. So the PTSD cycle starts off, if you look at the circle or the box with the 1 on it, starts off with a trauma reminder. So it could be hearing a car horn, down the street. Next is a fear of danger. This automatic fight or flight response kicks in. And that fight or flight response is uncomfortable. So the next step is avoiding it. So could the person might decide if they hear that car horn down the street that they are going to turn up the volume on the music they're playing at home so they don't hear any more car horns the rest of that day. And they might get some temporary relief from that. Over time, that temporary relief, though, comes with reduced functioning, because that temporary relief comes from escaping situations that are triggering that fight or flight response. So the world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And with that smaller world comes also a sense that the threats are greater and greater. We call that a heightened sensitivity to trauma cues. More things become dangerous with more avoidance. Every time you decide, for example, to not engage with a car, you're actually you're teaching your body that the car is dangerous. And with that heightened sensitivity to trauma cues becomes more likely that you're going to get reminded of trauma, and then actually paradoxically more fearful of the trauma and more avoidant. Now the pain cycle looks exactly the same. So it starts off with a pain sensation. Sometimes a pain sensation that can be really helpful for us. Like it might be a time to move your body a little bit. With that pain session then comes this fear of injury, right? If I actually do move or I move too much, I'm going to get injured. I'm going to re-injure myself like I did in the past. And then the automatic response to that is to escape that situation or avoid that situation that is triggering that pain sensation. And again, there's going to be temporary relief from that. But then again, with all that avoidance, your world gets smaller, you have reduced functioning. And with that reduced functioning, that reduced movement, that reduced engagement in like medically recommended behaviors like physical therapy, becomes more pain sensitivity, and then the cycle kicks in at that point. With more pain sensitivity, it's going to be more likely that you have these pain sensations. So the question is, for psychologists, is where do we intervene here? How do we break this cycle? And folks might think, one, right? Can we just completely avoid trauma reminders or pain sensations? And I'll say this, I think that's an attempt that a lot of people try to do. We call this like passive avoidance. Like, I don't get triggered in the first place, so I'm just not going to leave the house. That doesn't tend to work. There's not any good therapies that exist that primarily recommend avoiding reminders or pain sensations. Okay, so the next thought is, okay, two, could we change the way we think about these reminders? Can we change the way we think about pain? Can we like modify a belief that things are safe? Can we directly modify a belief that you won't get injured? And there are some therapists that will try to do that, and for some people, if this works, that's great. But I'll tell you, in our experience, and a lot of the research shows that's not sufficient. In fact, a lot of these fears of injury and fears of danger are very valid. So there is often a lot of truth to the potential of danger and re-injury. Yeah, even if you practice a new belief system again and again, you might not ever truly believe it to your core. These PTSD and chronic pain has thoughts that could be pretty pesky. Sometimes it's like, sure, that might actually be a little bit safe, but what about this? Or yeah, I might not get re-injured if I do this, but then what about this, right? These pain and chronic pain and PTSD have this kind of what if or what next kind of quality. In our view, what has the most evidence in terms of behavioral interventions for PTSD and pain are interventions that intervene at the third step, so avoidance. So directly facing these reminders and sensations in a systematic, like compassion-focused and medically recommended manner. So it's not kind of like white knuckling it and facing things that you know are going to actually hurt you or put you in danger. It's taking one step at a time to really test out, like, could I actually tolerate this? And would this be worthwhile to do that? And maybe if I did engage with it regularly, is there a chance that maybe some of this discomfort might even go down? Now, this avoidance approaching rather than avoiding often doesn't lead to a reduction in discomfort. Sometimes it does, sometimes it might not. But the more important question we find in therapies is it worthwhile? And it might not be completely getting back a person's life to where it was before the trauma or before an injury or a diagnosis. But it might be more fulfilling than it was while the person was stuck in this cycle. And in our therapies, we're always asking, what else is important in your life, and how can you get more meaning of that rather than just relief? Noticing that relief is important, and we want to help people compassionately identify relief, but not make that the primary motivator as they engage in healthcare. There's more to us than our symptoms. We also have meaning, purpose, and our value systems. So here's an example. I'll quickly kind of go through this about what this would look like. And again, this applies to both PTSD and pain. We can think about them in very much the same type of way. So this is a person got into a car accident. We want to create a list of activities, so behaviors they can engage with, and we want to have a variability in how much they anticipate the discomfort would be. And we follow the patient's lead in terms of how quickly we go with this, where we want to start, but in general, we want to go up. Sometimes you can take a step backwards as long as you know you're going to take a step forward. But in general, we want to help people start off with things that they feel like they can certainly tolerate. So it might be for this person going back into this car, not even turning on the engine, but just seeing if they can tolerate the emotions and maybe the fear of injury that might come up with just simply sitting in the car. And so once a person is able to do that, we'll coach them along the next steps. A person might find out that sitting in the car and the driver's seat with the engine turned off was really easy for them, actually, and they want to challenge themselves more. So we might say, okay, great, let's just turn on the car. We'll go to level 5, drive around the neighborhood alone, and they do great with that. And then we ask them to go around familiar roads with light traffic, and they do well with that. But then they might do unfamiliar roads in moderate traffic, and identify that was really difficult. Actually, they really it never got easy. They really struggled a lot to tolerate the emotion. They tried to kind of avoiding it a lot as much as possible, like pulling off to the side of the road. And so we might repeat that one several times until they feel confident in that task before we continue moving forward. And this process could again occur over the course of days. It could be weeks, it could be months. We want to cheerlead for people to go as efficiently as they can while they're motivated to do it. But this is very much a patient-centered and directed treatment approach. In fact, therapists for these kind of therapies are more of like like coaches or cheerleaders, really. The basic task is let's do this systematically, do it in a values-directed way, and let's do this because it is not because we're trying to eliminate all the discomfort, but because we're trying to increase functioning, we're trying to increase quality of life. Now, when the quality of life becomes more important, when people are more engaged in things they care about, and that becomes more significant, the threat of harm and danger becomes less and less significant. It becomes less central to their life. So we're kind of shifting the focus a little bit rather than focusing just on that threat detection and more on fulfillment in life, whatever that means for the patient. So the way we set up exposures, and we're going to practice one all together in a little bit, the way we set these up is we first want to target what is the emotion, like what is that internal feeling a person doesn't want to experience. Sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's could be guilt. We start off there, and you can think of exposure therapy as not just kind of engaging in these individual tasks like driving around your neighborhood. It's really learning to have a new relationship with those emotions. So we'll find out what is that emotion first, then we'll identify what activity is going to elicit that emotion, and can we design an activity that is, again, meaningful to that person. Like it's not just about getting in the car, it's getting in the car because that person cares about freedom, or that person cares about autonomy, or they care about responsibility. Like maybe that person feels like they want to go grocery shopping. So we'll design that, we'll identify that activity and really kind of design an activity that is really connected to their values. We want to know exactly all the details of when you're going to do it, where are you going to do it, for how long, how will you know when the exposure is done, and what are you hoping to learn from that? Some exposures, again, I think a lot of people think exposure is all about reducing discomfort. That can happen. That's great when that happens. But mostly what we're trying to help people learn is that they can tolerate it and that's worthwhile. So before we ask a person to do exposure, we'll kind of review all these aspects of it, and then say, what do we hope to learn from this? And then this is learning that it's not based on us telling them what to think or themselves telling themselves what to think. It's letting their experience telling them what they can think. So their mind might say you can't do this because you're going to get hurt or you're going to get re-injured, but their experience can tell them a different story. And with more of that experiential learning, we do see differences in perspectives that help people continue moving forward. All right, so Dr. Hellman and I are going to do an exposure with everybody. I'm going to role play being a therapist, which is good because I am a therapist. And Dr. Hellman, sorry, I just pressed the wrong button. such a movie. Okay, there we go. All right. So I'll be the therapist. Dr. Hellman will be the patient, and anybody here can practice along at home. It's going to be an interoceptive exposure. Interoceptive means like it's attention or perceptions of processes occurring within your body. And specifically, we're going to do an exposure that involves holding our breath. Now, if holding your breath is medically unsafe, you can definitely observe our reactions, and you still participate and ask questions afterwards if you want to. We picked this one because a lot of folks can do it at home without having to do anything too sophisticated on Second Life. So please only participate if you want to. We're going to use that scale I showed you on a scale earlier, from 0 to 100, with 0 being like really no distress at all and 100 being maximum distress. And we're going to do 3 rounds of holding our breath for 45 seconds. So I'm going to ask that people just kind of breathe in normal. Don't do it yet, by the way, that they just breathe in and out normally. I'll cue people in to hold it. And the whole purpose of this is to notice everything that comes up for you: sensations, thoughts, emotions, urges. We're not trying to change any of that. The task here is, can you face and tolerate the discomfort that comes from being short of breath? This is a very common exposure we do with people who, at the start of their exposures, often people have just a kind of a fear of anxiety itself. Um, or maybe not even good language to describe what anxiety feels like. And holding your breath does a great job of doing that. Physiologically, the feelings you're going to feel, you might notice, look really similar when you're in a situation that is provoking a sense of danger. So I'm going to role play this with Dr. Hellman, and then after we do this, we have a chance to talk about it all together.
I'll say things that we've heard patients say, but I'll also share my personal experience, because I think we're all human, and even if we don't have a clinically level of psychiatric concern, I think everyone can feel and experience while they go through it.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of exposures will just kind of bring us all closer to the human condition. Sometimes there's not a problem to be solved. Like, this is actually just what the human body does. So again, some people might be looking at this and thinking, wow, holding my breath, that's going to be miserable. And some people will think, okay, that's going to be easy. Regardless of your appraisals, like, try to notice it anyways. And let's all, connect over that. Okay. All right. So, it's funny, I don't know how to change my body position. So usually a therapist would make good eye contact, but I don't know how to do that. All right, Dr. Hellman. So we are going to, for our first exposure, we're going to be doing an interoceptive exposure. We're going to see if we can notice and sit with the same kind of physiological sensations you get when you are feeling panic and fear. We're going to do that by holding our breath intentionally. And I'm going to do this with you, actually. We're going to have several repetitions of holding our breath for 45 seconds. We're not going to talk during that time. We don't have to do anything besides just hold our breath. And if you feel like you really need to take a breath during that, it's okay. You can take a quick little breath in, but as much as you can, hold your breath. And we're doing this intentionally to experience some things that you say you have a hard time tolerating, and in fact, will do anything to avoid. Before we do this, tell me, from your perspective, like, what else might you hope to learn from doing this?
I think I just want to learn that I can do tough stuff. Like, there's so much that my mind says I can't do all the time. And I want to start to learn what's the difference between can't and won't.
Yeah. And a good example of that is, you've been told by the doctors that you should not do certain things anymore, right? Like, we've talked for weeks about
it done yet?
No, you're doing a great job.
No. Sorry, I have to cheat. I have to take a breath.
No, it's good. That's about our time. What do you notice right now?
Oh gosh, my hands are sweaty. My heart is kind of like racing right now.
Mhm.
Um, um, like I had so many thoughts, like I can't do this. I'm gonna die. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Was just like all my head was saying.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I've done this a lot for my job, and I even noticed myself like, oh, Andrew, you should be able to do this. You've done this so many times. And you did a great job sticking with it. And I saw you like, even though you needed to take that quick breath, you kind of went back to holding it. I love uh, that challenge. From that scale from 0 to 100, where are you at right now?
Right now, I'm probably I think like at a 50.
Okay.
Um, it's definitely come down though. Like at the end, I was at like an 80-90 when I had to cheat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Okay. Great. Great. So we got it all the way up to there. I was up around like 50 mostly the whole time before.
Yeah.
Uh, but my rating maybe went up a little bit when I saw that you're in distress. Part of me was almost wanting to kind of save you, and I have to remind myself this is safe, right? This is
Yeah.
awkward. People don't usually stand around and hold their breath. So our minds and our bodies are very active, and
Right.
um,
Right. Like this
getting,
is all about like retraining my mind and body. And I'm gonna guess that you got a 50 because you've done this so much. Like you're probably a pro at it.
oh yeah, yeah. I might not be good at holding my breath, but I'm a pro at the tolerance piece.
Yeah.
Try it again. Again, don't try to take a deep
Oh,
breath.
okay.
Stay breathing normal. And when you're ready, hold your breath now. All right, let's stop there.
Okay. Oh, okay.
All right, so what are you noticing right now? Whew.
Definitely still sweaty hands.
Yep,
I don't,
yep.
my heart isn't racing as much as it did before.
Mhm.
And I noticed that when it started, I wasn't as scared as I was the first time.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of pressure behind my eyes, and my
Ugh.
hands sweating this time, and my heart definitely it did go up, but I had this tension, like just all this built up pressure in my body this time.
Yeah, and I was like trying to count in my head, but I just totally lost track. Like there was like no way to count and do this at the same time.
Okay, yeah, I noticed that. Like, was that it? Was that a pre-planned strategy?
No, I was just desperate.
Okay, yeah, I noticed that. Like, was that it? Was that a pre-planned strategy?
No, I was just desperate.
Yep, yep. And this is what our minds do. Our minds are we're not built to be deprived of oxygen, so we're going to go quickly into problem-solving mode. We want to keep ourselves safe. And do you notice right now if there's any of those reactions are starting to decrease right now?
Yeah, like last time I ended, I was at like a 50. Now I feel like I'm at a 45.
Okay, great, great. I'm noticing right now it kind of feels good. I had this kind of tingly feeling on my nose, and it kind of went away, and it kind of feels cool now, um,
Oh,
almost
okay.
like a piece of ice on my nose. And this is our body. This is the parasympathetic nervous system kind of kicking in, right? We're trying to
Mm.
relax and taking normal breaths. But we're not off the hook yet. We're gonna do one more.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah, yeah. So I got a 45 now. I'd say like I'm about a 30. This is not a competition, but I got to be genuine. And let's just do one more repetition, starting now. Okay. You
Okay.
stop there?
Yeah.
All right. What do you notice right now?
That time wasn't so bad.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's I noticed that. What made it not as bad?
I think because I'd done it before and I kind of knew what was going to happen. Like I was like, oh yeah, okay. Now my
Mhm.
mind's going to say I'm going to die. Yep. All right. Okay. Now my hands are getting sweatier. Oh yeah, I knew that was going to happen.
Great. Great job observing those thoughts, right? Like you've been here before, you know what the mind's going to do. Not even trying to think those thoughts, you know what's going to happen. My
Yeah.
mind,
Right.
I'm looking at my watch here. Every time those last like few seconds, my mind is like, just end it, just end it. You can cheat. And it's funny. It's like my mind knows I'm trying to be a good psychologist, and yet also wants me to cheat just to be relieved for a few seconds, right?
Yeah.
Right. Um, and all those thoughts, all those feelings and sensations, they don't control what we do. Only
Yeah.
we can
That's
do
true. I kept holding my breath. You're right.
that. Hmm. Yep. So then, what's your rating right now?
Right now I'm probably like a 40. Like it's not
Hmm.
like my favorite thing to do in the world, but if I
Hmm.
had to, I could. Like somebody posted about being a scuba diver, and it's like if I ever wanted to do that, yeah, okay, I know I can hold my breath at least for 45 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. And also this direct in and of itself might not be that interesting or values focused, but knowing now that you can do these hard things and commit to this behavior, even though your mind was telling you not to, uh, does it inspire you to do anything else next that is meaningful to you?
Yeah, like I didn't think I could stand for that long. Like
Hmm.
I always thought I could only stand for like 5 to 10 minutes and that's it. You know, like I couldn't even do the dishes, but now I'm wondering if I could do just a little more than I am now.
Yes. Could you do a little more than you could do now? And that's all I asked during our treatment, right? We're not looking for really big changes on any session. Um, Even if it's not a step forward, but really just feeling like really confident where you are right now and getting repetition with that is great.
Yeah.
Um, so awesome job, Dr. Hellman. Now I'm curious for people playing at home, but your thoughts and your reactions to that. Yeah, knowing what will happen helps, right? This is a lot of what this is about is like understanding how the external world actually works, how you work, what you're capable of. Um,
I
and
can't
again,
just like do it one time. You know, I have to like keep doing it.
mhm. Okay. Let's see, I'm trying to monitor all the different ways I can hear from folks. Yeah, any other thoughts? Anybody um, have a really hard time with it? Because I want to. It's okay if people did. The exposure is always kind of win-wins. Sometimes things are easier than you thought, and it just means you're ready to take the next step. When things are maybe harder than you thought, that's great. You want to listen to that and maybe pace yourself. Maybe take a little bit step backwards and know kind of where you might be going in the future. Exposure therapy for PTSD and pain only really works when it's kind of grounded in reality. Uh, you don't want to do another person's exposures. You don't want to do the exposure you think is supposed to be the best. You want to look at your life and what you're able to do right now, and you know, uh, approach treatment from that orientation. All right. So I guess we continue unless I see anything else up. Again, thanks for your people's grace with our lack of familiarity with Second Life.
for leading us through that, Andrew. I think, like you said, anything that we say will not be as powerful as someone's experience doing it. So, unless there's anything else you want to share, I think we can move into the open forum where people can ask us questions or share more about their experience. Okay, there's a long question. With regards to the exposure hierarchy, if you force someone to jump in at level 10 straight away, would that guarantee a higher percentage of failure in most or all people? Or is this level always individual dependent? Yeah, that's a great question. There is an approach to exposure therapy where they will, with the patient consent and design, jump in at level 10, like let's do the hardest right away. Sometimes it's called flooding. We find that that only works in some cases. We tend to approach exposure therapy more broadly and starting at something that feels challenging but doable. So we always let the patient pick. Usually that comes around in like the level 5 or 6. Okay, the next question is quite clearly understood that there is a lot of stigma around mental health. Is there also stigma related to pain? How does pain stigma impact people?
Great question.
Yeah, I do think there is quite a lot of stigma about pain, about not being able to contribute to society or the household. Andrew and I have both worked with veterans, and we saw this quite a lot. Andrew, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, it's so interesting. It can go in both directions. I've seen people, this comorbid chronic pain and PTSD, where they maybe are okay with being identified as a person with PTSD, or they might be in not pain, and vice versa with, pain and not PTSD. And it often shows just how like culturally bound our interpretations of conditions are. So the and so part of the therapy process is understanding what are all the ways people get stuck. So it's avoidance is a big part of it, but one of the most sticky pathological processes is like a rule you might give yourself, like I am X and therefore I can't do Y. Those types of rules lead to a lot of that passive avoidance I was talking about earlier. We don't even do things in the first place. So like, for example, that would be like, um, uh, I have PTSD. I can't, and from combat, I can't enjoy Fourth of July anymore. If you think that, you'll never get a chance to experience Fourth of July or fireworks. And obviously, the same thing works with pain. Um, uh, I have this. I get migraines every time I travel. At some point, there's gonna be one day I'm gonna have a migraine, so I can't travel anymore. Um, and again, these rules are something we want to challenge through exposures, through experiences, rather than telling people how to think differently. And yeah, so a lot of that is going to be um, based on like how the rules they give themselves about what feels a kind of like um, like what is kind of society tell them they should think about themselves. Um, And so again, you could be stuck with any type of rule you give yourself. And part of that, kind of connecting this more to stigma, part of that rule could be, I have this condition, and that makes me unacceptable, or or people won't understand, or um, uh,
No one
um,
will date me.
yeah,
I can't have friends. Yeah.
late. Yep. And so yeah, so that's how we think about stigma often, is how is it showing up in kind of rules, and again, there are cognitive therapies that will try to help people change their appraisals for that. And I want to say that that might be an approach that works for people. But when people have noticed that trying to change thoughts themselves haven't worked, it's often because they're trying to kind of live their life from the head down, and exposure therapy is more from the feet up. Let's change the behavior first, and then some of those appraisals will change along with it.
Oh, that's a great point. With mobility issues, I have a fear of going someplace and not getting myself back.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that that is very relatable, and I do think that it also points to kind of how our world is, that not every place is accessible. Um, and that's a very unfortunate reality. And sometimes our mind can take that and kind of run with it and say, then that means no place is acceptable or accessible. But what we do find, especially with exposure therapy, is that there are times where our mind says we can't do this. But once we start doing the exposures, we find out that it was more of a won't. I don't want to do this. I won't do that. And now, when that happens, I get to decide, okay, yes, this one activity is not accessible. So I can't go there. But this other activity could be, and maybe I do want to do that. Maybe I want to give it a try. And I also recognize that with pain too, there are times when you have flare ups that it is not possible to do an exposure. And so that's where we always come back to, is this considered medically safe? Is it medically recommended or appropriate? And that can be a really nice guide into saying, okay, well, what's something that my mind is saying, and then what's something that is actually happening.
Yeah. Well, here's one. Will it be? I get too. Let's see. Will I get too tired? Is it overstimulating? Right. These are great questions to test out. Right. So when PTSD and chronic pain are totally in control, they are like these rules. I can't do this. Right. Um, uh, what we encourage people to do is be curious during exposures. Like, what might happen? Might you be overstimulated or not? Might you be overstimulated and still be okay with it? Right? Um, uh, might you be? Might you? Let's see. Could you trust people that you're going with to help you in case there are mobility issues? Um, uh, uh, these questions are often you can't really determine in your head, right? You can only really test out in real life. And it means sometimes things, the answers are not what you're looking for, but again, even that's a win-win. Noticing like when things are even more emotional than we thought, or maybe things were more dangerous than we thought. It helps us recalibrate again what to do next. The catch with the avoidance is you'll never learn, and the direction of like functionality only goes downward when you don't experiment.
There's a chicken or the egg question. Which came first? It doesn't matter. You have
Yeah.
to deal with both. Is it a correct interpretation about pain and mental health issues? Yeah, I think from my perspective, and Andrew, you can share as well. Like, I think sometimes we get in medicine, we get so focused on the label, finding the right diagnosis, the right term to use, that what's actually more important is your experience, right? We can design an exposure to address pain, and maybe some of the PTSD symptoms come up. And that's great because that's just how you live, right? That's your experience. Sometimes people want to focus on one more than the other. But I think you're right. Like the why may not always necessarily matter. What matters is what's now. Yeah, sometimes insurance, especially in America, may only pay for dealing with one thing. Is it better to start one way or the other? Um, I find, insurance is something that I think Americans have to grapple with a lot more than other areas of the developed world. And sometimes there are things that insurance will cover and will not. And if that's the thing that you want to take back, the thing you want to focus on, then it makes total sense to focus on just that one piece for a while. What we find is that when one starts to get easier, some people can have the other thing get easier even without addressing it in therapy. Or sometimes it means we do kind of a second course of therapy. So we still do exposure therapy, but we shift it towards the other experience. And I think that, at least from our perspective as therapists, I think that that's okay. But Andrew, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I know you said it really well. Like, but even that question keeps us stuck, right? So again, avoidance shows up in a lot of different ways, and sometimes it's very much, uh, like Dr. Hellman during our exercise was like, if only I was a swimmer, this would be helpful. So sometimes we'll do that. Like, if only the system was different, or only if uh, um, I knew exactly how this started, or if only I knew exactly how my brain worked, then I'll be able to do things. And that's just your brain trying to do its job. It's trying to help you out, problem solve. But to engage in exposures, you often don't need to have all those wonderful thoughts. Um, you you can like I like to say, when you're in a hole, it doesn't matter how you get in the hole, get out of the hole, right? You can retrace your steps as much as possible, and none of that helps you get out of the hole. And when we look at our lives and where like a lot of our emotional suffering comes from, it's more in the terms of like behaviors. So the connections we have with people, the things we're doing, showing up to work or school or volunteering. It's not like thinking the best thoughts. you know, it's not like you know, when our legacies are not often like, this person was so great, he really had a good understanding of like the root of his pathology. It's often like, hey, this person was so great, like they had to deal with a lot and kind of was able to took a lot of, used a lot of courage to kind of live a life that was as fulfilling as possible. So again, our orientation is behavior, behavior, behavior.
Yeah. Andrew, there's a question that says, I have a PTSD question. Is there anger with PTSD? And we're lucky because anger is one of Andrew's specialties or expertises.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big part of it. So at the core of like both pain and PTSD are like these, right, like these signals that are like we've been hurt, we've gone through some kind of injury or have some kind of condition, and then we have like these signals that things are dangerous, right? Um, and that is those signals are often very, very uncomfortable, and often we don't know what to do with it. One way of that people can cope is just be mad at the world, kind of not focusing on their own anxiety or their own fears or their own pain, but just be really mad at the world, like a lot of yelling at the TV, yelling at people. That's often like a protection mechanism. So it's often in their therapy, like one of the first kind of layers that we peel back. So it's certainly a common part of it, but I don't want to say it's the core piece of it. It's almost like this layer that shows up as as like another protective layer. Um, Usually right behind that right behind that anger is the emotion we want to work with.
I think when PTSD is portrayed in movies and TV shows, the anger is what we see quite often.
Mhm.
And with pain as well, I've had a lot of patients say like, "Well, I'm angry that my body's betraying me. It's not letting me do the things that I want to do." And when we see that, I think that that is valid, right? It makes sense that you're angry at this because now your life looks really different, and it's not how you want it to look. And as Andrew's saying, that there's a lot of sadness underneath that, and so in therapy, we'll move more towards the sadness because that's what we think is really underlying it.
Yeah, anger is what often gets people into our doors. So it's like a fight in a relationship. They realize they're not really treating people the way that they want to treat them. But when you only focus on just the anger, it's often like dealing with the smoke and not the fire. So now Dr. Hellman's totally like spot on with most of her anger is very valid actually, and a great way to work through it is to validate yourself or be around people that will validate that, and then say, okay, now that we know that this does suck, right, and this is unfair, like what do we do next? Because sitting with that anger is kind of like that metaphor of like drinking the poison, hoping to hurt somebody else, and often just hurts ourselves.
I'm recognizing that our time is maybe out. I'll let Gentle Heron take us off the stage when we have to, but happy to stick around and answer other questions, or if you want to like do the individual chat, welcome to stay around and send some messages that way.